This afternoon, tens of millions of Americans witnessed a total solar eclipse, a rare occurrence when parts of North America descended into temporary darkness. NTD's Chris Spears is in Syracuse, New York, to catch this celestial event of a generation.
On Monday, a total solar eclipse crossed through the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. A total solar eclipse happens when the moon completely blocks the light of the sun. The sky darkens as if it were dawn or dusk. Here in the U.S., the path of totality passed diagonally from Texas to Maine, but most people in the country will be able to see at least a partial eclipse from where they live. From Indianapolis to Kerrville, Texas, eclipse chasers gathered to get the clearest view of the celestial event. Syracuse, New York is one such prime viewing location just inside the path of totality. Here's what people there told us about their experience.
The sun's out, but it's not. It's just magical. I mean, obviously we were hoping the aliens would come and take us, but no luck. We're still here.
It impressed me, the darkness. Well, it was just like, might as well be 11 o'clock at night.
It was really incredible. It was a core memory and it was an awesome experience.
Taught us a lot about researching and collecting data, not just for this, but for other things, and also taught us a lot about how the eclipse affects the climate and things like that.
Totality lasted up to 4 minutes and 28 seconds. The first location in continental North America that experienced totality was Mexico's Pacific coast. The path of totality then entered the U.S. in Texas around 2:20 p.m. Eastern Time, before traveling through multiple states and exiting the U.S. in Maine at around 3:40 p.m. Eastern. Weather permitting, people along the path of totality were able to see the sun's corona, or outer atmosphere, which is usually obscured by the bright light of the sun's surface. The solar eclipse prompted authorities in multiple states to issue travel warnings and severe weather alerts. One estimate says the eclipse could generate $6 billion in economic activity as hotels and businesses along the path receive an influx of visitors. Delta Airlines even provided path of totality flights for people to view the experience above the clouds. Throughout history, solar eclipses have held spiritual significance for various religions around the world. Today's cosmic phenomenon comes just days after a rare earthquake shook the East Coast, sparking discussion about the end times and other interpretations. The last total solar eclipse visible in the United States was in 2017. The next won't be until 2044. Reporting from Syracuse, New York, Chris Spears, NTD News.
President Biden has announced a new plan to offer student debt relief to millions of Americans. This after the Supreme Court blocked a similar attempt last year. Our Washington correspondent has more details on the White House's new strategy.
President Biden announced today a new effort to offer student debt relief to over 30 million people. According to the White House, the plan would entirely eliminate the debt of 4 million borrowers, would eliminate the accrued interest on the debt of 23 million people, and offer up to $5,000 in student debt relief to 10 million other persons.
My administration will propose a new rule to cancel up to $20,000 in runaway interest for any borrower that owes more now than when they started paying the loan. And for low and middle class families enrolled in my SAVE program, we'll cancel all of your interest.
The new effort comes less than a year after the Supreme Court struck down President Biden's $400 billion student debt relief executive order in June of 2023. President Biden spoke about his new plan during an event in the battleground state of Wisconsin. Vice President Kamala Harris did the same in Pennsylvania. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona spoke at an event in New York State, and Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff appeared in Arizona. I spoke with Jesus Marquez, co-founder of the American Christian Caucus, and he thinks today's announcement is central to President Biden's re-election strategy.
It's done in the middle of an election period, an election season that is meant for that, to buy votes. Biden sees that Donald Trump is up in the polls, and he's trying to incite and revive the college generation.
The Biden administration has already approved over $146 billion in student debt relief, benefiting more than 4 million Americans through more than a dozen executive orders.
This is no relief for anything. It is actually going to be a debt of school loans to be transferred to others to pay.
Republicans in Congress have accused the president of abusing the power of his office. Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas posted on X this morning saying that, I quote, President Biden is ignoring the Supreme Court and shamelessly raiding the Treasury. He is using your money to buy votes. According to last week's Marist national poll, President Biden is trailing former President Donald Trump among millennials and Gen Z voters. It is expected that parts of this new effort by the Biden administration to offer student debt relief will come into effect before November's presidential election. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Former President Trump declining to endorse a nationwide abortion ban, saying it should be determined by individual states. Here's Trump announcing his stance in a video this morning.
Many states will be different. Many will have a different number of weeks, or some will have more conservative than others, and that's what they will be. At the end of the day, this is all about the will of the people. You must follow your heart, or in many cases, your religion or your faith.
And Trump also says his policy on abortion would include exceptions for rape and incest, as well as protection for the life of the mother. While many Republican lawmakers say they agree with the former president, some anti-abortion groups say they're disappointed that Trump didn't go as far as to endorse a national ban. And President Biden, meanwhile, is using it to attack Trump, saying in a statement today that Trump is responsible for creating the cruelty and the chaos after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And at a Florida fundraising event over the weekend, Trump secures almost double the amount of President Biden's record-breaking haul earlier this month. Joining me now to discuss that and a potential ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza is Kash Patel, senior advisor to Trump. Kash Patel, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
So first, on fundraising, President Trump's campaign raised $50.5 million at a fundraiser in Palm Beach, and this sets a record for a single fundraising event and far surpassed the $26 million that President Biden raised in New York City last month with two of his Democratic predecessors. Does this signal how President Trump's fundraising will go now that he's the presumptive nominee, and will he be able to catch up despite President Biden's current still overall cash edge over Trump?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to juxtaposition the two. If you look at President Biden, he had to rent out Rockefeller Center, invite 3 presidents in all of Hollywood to raise $26 million, minus the cost of having it in Rockefeller Center. And when you look at what President Trump did was drive down the street from Mar-a-Lago to a very nice house in Palm Beach with very little cost, and they had a fundraiser which raised close to $51 million. I think what that shows you is that the direction of the country, not just financially, but their desire to see whichever candidate is their person to be president. And right now, to me, it looks like the country is leaning heavily towards President Trump, not just in big dollar donations, but in small dollar donations. So I think the advantage is going to continue there for President Trump on this ride. I don't think it matters the overall total. We all know that there are some very deep money pockets on the Democratic side that might cut some big checks. But if you don't have the will of the country, it doesn't matter how big the check is.
President Biden's campaign is now accusing Trump of hosting, quote, racist and extremists at a Palm Beach fundraiser, adding that Donald Trump, quote, will do the bidding of his billionaire buddies instead of what is best for the American people. So back to what you were talking about, would you be concerned about the messaging here when it comes to these big fundraisers and to the American people when it comes to, if it's supported by billionaires only or the grassroots efforts?
It's hypocritical because the Democrats have the bigger billionaire fundraisers by the handful who have been and continue to fund Joe Biden's campaign. So I don't understand. Are they going to stop taking money from George Soros and company? Are they going to stop utilizing money from people who have been in precarious legal positions? Or are they just going to continue to inject rhetoric cheaply into this race? And speaking of billionaires who are racist, which ones are they talking about? Who was there that Donald Trump is doing the bidding of? I know it makes for a catchy headline because of the phraseology they use, but I think the American people are seeing there's no truth to that. And when we look at the Black and Hispanic vote, we see droves of minorities coming over to President Trump's side. That completely destroys the narrative that Donald Trump is a racist in any way, shape, or form. And me as his senior advisor for national security and defense, being a minority myself, that also destroys that narrative. But that doesn't mean they're going to they're going to stop writing it.
The White House confirmed today that CIA Chief William Burns was in Cairo trying to broker a hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, which would allow some hostages to be set free. And they are now waiting for Hamas to respond to the proposal. What would another potentially longer pause in fighting do right now to the overall war situation in Gaza?
That situation is a creation of Biden's own making, not only by delisting terrorists that started that war, but by also flooding Iran, this largest state sponsor of terror, with $6 billion in cash, who then gave it to Hamas, who launched this war. So the pace and timetable of that war, in my opinion, is going to go on for some time. I don't know that the Biden operation has the ability to shut it down. When it comes to hostages, that's something I had a special role in the President Trump administration. You know, he was able to return 54 hostages and detainees. That's more than every president before him combined. So any effort to go get hostages, I'm all for. I just don't know that it's going to work, given the fact that we, the United States of America, don't have any leverage points through the Biden administration against Hamas and those terrorists that are holding Americans, Israelis, and others hostages. So I really do hope that they are returned, but it is a very tough road when you have the leverage, like we did in the Trump administration. When you don't, it's almost impossible.
Kash Patel, thank you so much as always for joining us.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.